Alright, so now let's just kind of keep going ahead and start building up some detail in our volcano here. And I'm not too worried about this kind of square top, as we're going to distort it even further. So in our main distort here, we've got the overall amplitude, and we can really start deforming this. The scale of our element size here. A lot of these parameters in Houdini are probably used to seeing. We've also got simplex noise, and we can layer these on top of each other as many times as we want. So for this, I'm going to go with a curl. I'm going to choose a really low element size. This is to create really small looking details. I'm going to use an amplitude of 1. So we're just creating a small little details first. And you might want to do this after our main noise here. Alright, so in our main noise, what we're doing is we're adding noise to the overall set here, all the geo. So first of all, let's dial in kind of our amplitude and our scale. And I'm really just trying to break up the edges of the ridges here. So if you see kind of in our reference here, they've got some broken up edges, maybe not so much, but in the background here they've got some real broken up edge there. So that's just what I'm mainly trying to do and get rid of that uniform pattern. Alright, so now let's go ahead and do some masks to control where we're putting this. So a lot of how you'd be working in the terrain system is by masks. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to limit our next distortion to only the mountain. So I'm going to throw down, I'm going to press HF for height field and draw mask. So I'm just going to manually draw this mask. So if we just take a look at it from the top, press enter in the keyboard, now I can just kind of draw along where we're going to apply this noise. And I want it to be on the mountain itself, but maybe just under around where the water is going to be interacting. So maybe it gets a little bit of a better kind of fade in or build up to where the mountain's going to start. So just like that, draw around that. That's the mask for our noise here. So you'll see in the second input of the height field, we've got a mask input. So let's take a look at that, and let's just plug that in to the previous node. And boom, we've got the mask limited to that area. Alright, so also in the height field, you'll notice that we're going underground a little bit. And we just want to offset that a little bit. So I'm going to go into the post-processing, and I'm going to change the bias. And the bias, we're just going to move that up a little bit to 0.6. And alright, even though it's high, let's just take a look at something else. Let's put down, I forgot, after the draw mask, let's put a height field blur. Height field mask blur. This is going to blur that mask. And let's do a high radius. So now if we look at that noise, we've got a nice kind of blur into where the water is going to be. That's pretty cool. So we could, depending on the scale of your noise or what you're going for, we could scale that up or down. Maybe increase the mask blur. You can see how we're just going to fade that out a little bit more. Alright, so now that we've got that done, what we want to do is pretty much going to be it for our mountain here. But we could also throw down, whenever we use a mask and we don't want to continue using it, we're going to throw down a height field mask clear. And that's going to clear that mask. And now we could do another one. We could do another height field noise, adding another smaller details again, and we could put that on another mask. This time, real quick, let's just go over the mask by feature. And this is where you get a lot of your details in the terrain generator and how to really focus on certain areas. So the mask by feature, we've got a lot of areas like the slope, the height, peaks and valleys, direction, and occlusion. We'll use these a little bit later, but essentially, you know, we can limit where we want the mask based on the slope angle, based on the height. If we go to compute range, we'll compute the range and we can modify the height of where we want the masks, and direction if we just want it from facing, say, east. And we've got the curvature. So we've got a lot of different options to use these features. So for instance, we could mask by slope, get certain areas of the slope of the mountain, and then use another height field noise that's just going to add detail to the slope areas. And then after that, we'd obviously have to clear the mask out again. So essentially you can see how we can start building up all these details, but we won't take it that far. We'll just keep our 2 layers deep. We're going to get more resolution from the erode node and from the height field when we finally increase the uniform sampling, or by the axis in our grid samples here. So finally, if we go down to our height field erode, take a look at that. We want to go into the visualization and just compute the range of from our lows to our highs there. And now we can go and erode away our mountain. So one thing I want to do with the erode is I just want to dial back the thermal erodibility. And you'll see here it's controlling the bedrock and debris, the softness. And if we just dial this back to 0.5, you see the brown areas there. It's not going to form so quickly. But that's pretty much it. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the overall resolution of my mountain here by going into the original height field and the grid samples. We can really dial this up, something like 2048, depending on your computer and how much RAM you have. So this is really going to be dependent on your computer, as this can really get quite heavy. And you can see if we play along, we're getting more ravines, more details. And remember, this is going to be all covered with trees. So I'm mainly concerned about kind of the top rock areas. So for my final resolution, I'm going to double this to 4096. And it's going to be quite a heavy mountain, but then we're going to cache it out. So let that build for a moment. See a lot of detail we have now. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play this along until we get a frame that we want to start at for our scene. So we're pretty much just going to play along the erosion. Then when we're happy with how this is all looking, we can go up to freeze at frame. You can freeze that frame, kind of hold it there, and then we'll cache it out. So there we go, we have something. And once you're happy with it, let's set, for instance, on my example, we're going to do frame 6. Let's freeze that frame. And let's go back to frame 1. And now we can go ahead and cache this out. So when you're happy, play around with the settings, have some fun with it, play around with the noise settings and that, and when you're happy, I'm going to go ahead and throw down a file cache, and I'm going to write this out into, let's see, terrain, volcano, '01. I always like to specifically name my assets in that and not use the scene names. And I always like to use the expression $F4, and that's going to keep the frame padding always to 4 numbers. So I'm just going to write this out as terrain, volcano, $F4, and I'm just going to save this current frame. And when you're happy with it, let's go ahead and load that from disk. And so I've already got this written out, and so I'm going to load this volcano here. So this is the previous one that I've loaded in for my shot here that I've already made. And so that's it for this lesson. In the next one, we'll go ahead and we'll start setting up a quick shader and get ready to instance.